22 years ago, in a decision rooted in fear rather than fact, the United States instituted a travel ban on entry into the country for people living with HIV/AIDS. Now, we talk about reducing the stigma of this disease, yet we've treated a visitor living with it as a threat. We lead the world when it comes to helping stem the AIDS pandemic, yet we are one of only a dozen countries that still bar people from HIV from entering our own country. If we want to be the global leader in combating HIV/AIDS, we need to act like it. And that's why on Monday, my administration will publish a final rule that eliminates the travel ban, effective just after the new year. Congress and President Bush began this process last year, and they ought to be commended for it. We are finishing the job. It's a step that will encourage people to get tested and get treatment. It's a step that will keep families together, and it's a step that will save lives.
दिल को हजार बार रोका रोका रोका, दिल को हजार बार टोका टोका टोका। हाँ 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 दिल को हजार बार रोका रोका रोका।
Fair immigration reform. We needed to know. We needed to know, you know. Do I look fat on camera?
So Debanuj, what happened today? Why are we here?
It really didn't happen today. It happened yesterday. Officially, the HIV ban on immigration was lifted. And actually the bill that was called the Presidential Emergency Fund for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, got passed in July 2008, and that officially removed the HIV ban from the Immigration and Nationalization Act. But there was still an administrative ban that was on the books with the Health and Human Services. So a bunch of folks that I was part of, a coalition called Lift the Bar Coalition, continued to lobby Health and Human Services for removing HIV from the list of inadmissible diseases. And that happened, they issued the new regulations in November 2009, and yesterday onwards the regulation went into effect. Which means people can travel to the US if you're positive, and if you're inside the US, you can apply, you can readjust your status, you can apply for adjustment of status, even if you're positive. We don't know exactly how it'll work out for adjustment of status, but this is a good step.
Do you think this happened because of Obama administration?
No, this happened as a part of a...
It happened under Bush. Well, it got lifted first time like in 2007, but the administrative structures are really what limit people's lives in all kinds of cracked out ways.
So the ban was actually instituted in 1991. Legally as part of Immigration and Nationalization Act. In the early 90s there were some efforts to lift the ban, but it did not go through. The actual ban got removed from law during Junior Bush's last term. I am under the impression he tried to pass one piece of legislation that would be his legacy. And what happened during the new administration was the Health and Human Services removed HIV from its list of inadmissible diseases. Having a new administration did help, getting it removed from Health and Human Services, but they kind of had to. I mean, the work was in motion for many, many years, and this is not just because of the new administration. This is because of many years of on-the-ground activism, lobbying, organizing by LGBT, immigrant rights, HIV/AIDS organizers.
Oh, you should grab that, how immigration law will pass.
Could you explain it to me?
Oh, darling, this is where I'm going to fail miserably in political science. But, okay, so the way this works over here, the way the diagram is so they start from the Senate. I mean, it could happen either way. It could start from the House or the Senate. But the way it's happened here is, so Senator Chuck Schumer from New York, he's on the Senate Immigration Committee. That Immigration Committee Senate Subcommittee on Immigration would introduce the bill. It goes to the Senate Immigration Committee, debates, changes, and votes happen within that bill. Then it goes to the full Senate for vote. If the full Senate passes it after debating and changing, if the bill passes, it goes to the House Immigration Committee then, which is the lower house, which is the lower chamber of the US Parliament. Then debates and changes and votes happen on that bill that came from Senate to the House Immigration Committee. Then the House Immigration Committee sends to the entire House of Representatives for a full vote. Changes and modifications and a vote happen, and if a yes happens, then the bill is sent to now President Barack Obama, to sign into law, or he can veto it.
Is that what happened with the ban to HIV?
The ban is a little bit complex process. So, the U.S. Congress historically has given the right, has had the right to exclude populations based on health statuses. So as early as 1917, we see terms like psychopathic personalities. We see, TB, cholera, folks with those kind of diseases would be barred from entry into Ellis Island. And there's like a documentation of folks coming into Ellis Island, being medically examined, and if anyone looked sick, would be thrown out. So that's kind of the history of disease being sort of a part of the sort of population sort of movement in the US. But I think when HIV/AIDS sort of came into the consciousness in the early 80s, the then Republican Congress really wanted some form of HIV testing to happen to bar immigrants who had AIDS to be entering the country. And this really happened around the time there was a Haitian refugee crisis. There were many Haitians escaping Haiti and coming on boats, and a bunch of them were arrested and kept in deportation and under unhygienic conditions, and there were Haitian immigrants living with AIDS. And the Haitian Centers Council fought a successful lawsuit and was able to bring these detainees who were living with AIDS into into mainland USA and get them access treatment. So around that time, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was this sort of administrative ban on HIV, which meant the US Health and Human Services did not allow folks deemed HIV as an inadmissible disease. So when President Bill Clinton first came to power in 91, he had promised during his election cycle to take off the HIV ban. And when he tried to initiate that process, the then Republican Congress, there was a huge backlash, and Senator Jesse Helms introduced the HIV ban bill. So that the administrative ban then became a legal ban. It became a law and was instituted within the Immigration and Nationalization Act. So, later on when, Lift the Bar Coalition started to think of strategies of how to remove the ban, we had to think of it in two ways, both removing the legislative ban and also working with Health and Human Services to remove HIV from its list of inadmissible diseases. And I think the coalition and some of the sort of larger organizations within the coalition like AIDS Action, GMHC, and Immigration Equality, who had access to people in Capitol Hill, started talking to folks, especially in John Kerry's office and Senator Barbara Lee's office. And so initially, Nancy Ordover, when she was working for GMHC, sort of went around with this one piece of bill, and then that sort of piecemeal bill on removing the ban got tagged onto the Presidential Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief called PEPFAR, which George Bush Jr. desperately wanted to pass before he left office, his second term. That bill passed and he signed that into law in July 30th, 2008. So by virtue of that, what happened was HIV was removed. The HIV ban as part of the Immigration and Nationalization Act was removed, but there still had to be work done with Health and Human Services to remove the inadmissibility category of HIV from the administrative ban. So work had been happening between 2008 and 2009 with Health and Human Services to get that removed. In July 2009, last year, Health and Human Services came out with the new bill, with the new regulations. It went on public comments. It seemed the process went pretty well. And finally, in November 2009, Health and Human Services came out with the complete new regulations, removing HIV as an inadmissibility criteria, following which Department of Justice circulated an internal memo saying that no longer immigration officers or adjustment cases could be denied just on the basis of health, like HIV status. And it was all really framed very scientifically, like you really cannot argue in the policy realm when you present scientific evidence, like, that HIV is not a communicable disease, it's treatable, the cost to actually test and deport and detain immigrants on the basis of their status is actually lesser than the cost of providing folks with medication. And also sort of the economic impact of the ban in terms of lost taxes to the US government, like all of us who could not pay taxes even though we were working, I think all collectively appealed. But another part of this work was, I think, really exciting that Nancy Ordover was able to insert the human rights language and the human rights angle to this bill and say, the United States, if you're claiming to be one of the biggest supporters of global human rights, this law violates UN Human Rights Treaty. But the new regulation would only go into effect after 60 days of it being issued. So it really went into effect on January 4th of 2010. So hence...
Like this week.
This week. Hence that celebration on January 5th for all of us to gather and drink at a bar. কাজ ভালোই চলছে আমি আর একটা চাকরিরও অফার পেয়েছি সো আমি একটু বাড়ি কর্তনের ব্যবস্থা করার চেষ্টা করছি ফিরতে চাকরিটা নিয়ে আর কি আর আমি এখন নিউ ইয়র্কে আছি কাজে আমি একটা কনফারেন্সে যাচ্ছি আসলে আমার সেলফোনটা একটু পরেই মরে যাবে আমার ব্যাটারিটা ডাউন হয়ে গেছে আমি ইভিনিংয়ে আমি অফ হয়ে যাবে আমি চার্জ করি তোমাকে কল ব্যাক করবো বাট ইউ শুড নো দ্যার ইজ সামওয়ান মেকিং আ ফিল্ম on me and he's recording me right now and so he's recording me talking to you on the phone. He's a filmmaker from Brazil. So it's a film about my work and on immigration policy so I'm going to record korche. So I said I think you should catch this moment. Love you mama. Our phone is about dying. Papa, give my love to Papa.
That they would
So Debanuj, you were born in India, right?
In Calcutta, which is now called Kolkata, in 1973. I grew up in Calcutta, a stable middle-class Bengali community. I went to school there. I went to a Jesuit school all my life. was in 5th grade, decided to have a career and make money because, things were shifting in India. We needed more income, and she decided to go to law school and became an attorney. I think some of my first lessons in being a male ally for women come from supporting my mom while she was engaging in that shift in her life.
Was she married?
Yeah, she's married to my dad. My dad's an attorney, also sort of very leftist, my father. So I get a lot of sort of left history and sort of left principles and ethics from my mom and my dad. My mom's my grand aunt, my mom's aunt, is India's first woman psychoanalyst. So I come from a long lineage of very strong women.
Do you want to walk?
Let's walk towards the restaurant.
Was your family religion oriented?
Not really. They're a classic case of Hindu liberals. My dad's Marxist, never really participated in religion that much. My mom is pretty committed to sort of temples and Hinduism, but not really fundamentalist or committed to religious boundaries. My dad, who's an attorney, I remember had a very close friend, we'd call him Ali Uncle, who's also a professional, who's an attorney. And so we had Muslim family friends and stuff. But there are some markers even within that. I remember my mom telling me a story going to Ali Uncle's kids party or something and seeing cows being butchered, and she was shocked by it. But interestingly, my mom did her master's in Islamic history, so it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And then she went to get an MBA degree and a law degree, and she practices law. She does a lot of work with middle-class women and working-class women around women's access to legal services and stuff. And my dad is a corporate attorney. He does corporate taxation matters. But our house was a seat of the cultural left movement in Calcutta, because Calcutta has an explicit history of Marxist parties participating in political struggles, and the government of West Bengal is a Marxist government, and several Marxist and leftist intellectuals and poets would come into our house. My dad collaborated the theater department at Jadavpur University and Rabindra Bharati University, and they translated The Plebeians Rehearsed the Uprising, which is a play by Günter Grass around the partition of Germany. And Günter Grass came and lived in Kolkata for a year, and my dad was playing a key role in that. And I remember meeting Günter Grass and his wife Ute Grass when I was in 7th grade, and learning about East and West Germany and what the partition of Europe meant. It was an exciting process. So I got to see a lot of sort of cultural movement work happening via my mom and my dad in Kolkata. So I think I should give you a context as to where we are walking. We are walking in Jackson Heights around Roosevelt Avenue. This is the seat of South Asian business, and South Asians in the tri-state area come to shop here. This is a very well-known Bengali bookstore called Mukthara. I've come here many times to buy Bengali DVDs and tapes and books. And actually right around here, right here at this corner, is where Queen's Pride Parade happens, and the stage for the Pride Parade Festival is right here. And it's very interesting. It's one time of the year. This space is shared space between queers and so-called South Asian straight business folks and immigrants, and it's a very shared space. So this space has a lot of rich history. Actually, one of my first experiences of this street corner was in 2000 when I first moved to the city. There was a murder of a Guyanese young immigrant man, and some of the immigrant rights group, Audre Lorde Project,
many of us gathered here to sort of, protest this murder. And this street corner, I remember very well, was that corner. I don't know if this movie theater is still open. Used to be the Eagle movie theater where we would come and watch Bollywood films. They would screen Bollywood films. I'm told it's shut down now. It
Okay.
doesn't run.
So when did you have your first kiss and experience? Was it in India or in the United States?
No, my first kiss. I don't remember my first kiss, but like my coming into my desire for other men was definitely, it happened in India. Like I had an idea about what I was coming into. But I remember like when I was in 11th grade, I was taking private tuition and I would walk from my house to my tutor's house. I was taking tutorial classes in economics. And I would have to go through this part of the city that's called the Lakes. We live right by what would be an equivalent of Central Park West.
Okay.
So there's like a lake and there's like huge roads and like swimming clubs and stuff. So I'd have to walk through that in the evening, and I realized there were other young men in general, walking back and forth and looking at each other and then asking for the time and then like starting to talk. That's when I realized that that's cruising ground.
Yeah.
Do you cruise other men there? And I started doing that, and like after a year, like
How old were you?
I think I was like 18. I mean, by the time I knew I was, interested in other men. So then I would do that a lot, and after a few months of doing that and having sex with a few of the boys, men, we became friends, and so there was a small circle of like friends that swarmed in the lakes, in the cruising grounds. So we stopped cruising, we just like hang out with each other. I met another student of mine, a senior of mine, 1 year senior, Parvez Sharma, who's now a very well-known filmmaker who made a Jihad for Love, which is one of the like well-known documentaries about queer Muslims. But back then he was studying English and I was studying sociology, and we met on the corridors, and I walked up to Parvez and started talking, and we figured out our queerness, and Parvez was like, "You're going to come meet my friend Pawan Dhal. We have a newsletter and we're planning to start a support group." So all of this like cruising and this meeting Parvez and Pawan was all happening around the same time, 92, 93. Around the same time, I met this other really cute boy, man,
From Kolkata,
From
either?
Kolkata, we were lovers. So we all met at Pawan's house in like August of 93, and we started Council Club, and we started doing outreach in these cruising places. So it was a very interesting time of like doing, and back then we just said gay and lesbian work. I mean, transgender, all of those terms really didn't emerge back
Were
then.
those categories, gay, lesbian, did they make sense in India back then when you started?
No, I think we just like took the terms that came to us primarily through other immigrant, professional, lesbian and gay men from India who were doing work here in the US, and they were bringing out journals and newsletters, and we just like read those and used those terms. But I think later on the complications around those terms emerged. Let's go eat, I'm so hungry.
What restaurant are we gonna?
We're going to go to Alauddin. This is a very well-known Bangladeshi diner and restaurant. When I first moved to New York, they were around the block over there, and for $6.95 you could eat an all-you-can-eat buffet, which is like really home-cooked Bengali food.
Yeah. You pick for me, okay?
Okay.
এখানে তিন টাইপের বিরিয়ানি আছে গোট বিরিয়ানি চিকেন বিরিয়ানি
গোটটা কোনটা?
এটা গোট
এটা গোট বিরিয়ানি, এটা চিকেন।
এটা দেখতে আর এটা বড় খোলা
এটা কোনটা মোরগ হলো?
এটা
এটা। So what kind of biryani do you want? Do you want goat? Do you want beef? Do you want chicken biryani?
I want chicken.
Chicken. So একটা হাফ প্লেট চিকেন বিরিয়ানি নেবে, আর একটা কোনটা গোট হলো? গোশট কোনটা? এটা মোরগ। So আর একটা হাফ প্লেট মোরগ।
that should do it.
চিকেন বিরিয়ানি আর একটা মোরগ পোলাও।
আর সবজি।
এর সাথে কোনো কারি খাবে?
হ্যাঁ, দেখছি ভেন্ডি কারিটা দেবেন।
হ্যাঁ, এটা দেয়া যায়।
ঠিক আছে, পারফেক্ট।
এটা
আচ্ছা,
one order, right?
হ্যাঁ
One order দিলে?
হ্যাঁ, ওই দুটো হাফ হাফ আর এটা ওয়ান, আর দুটো চা। আচ্ছা, থ্যাংক ইউ।
To choose?
Yes, we got two kinds of chicken biryani and some okra curry and 2 chais. হ্যাঁ, actually soda দেন, চা দিয়ে না, একটু soda. You want soda?
Yes.
Pepsi?
Coke. Do you Mountain Dew? You have Mountain Dew? So the brown ethnicity, you just realized that when you came to the United States at the university in Calcutta, you didn't realize that?
No, I think, I mean, in Kolkata, through my family who were immigrants to the US, you know, were very sort of upper class professional engineers and doctors. My idea of the US was the seat of consumerism. You can have 100 kinds of ice cream, you know. That was kind of the image of the US, and of course you hear, oh, there is racism in the US and stuff, but it was primarily a place where professionals would ultimately end up to get higher degrees and do like excellent quality work. It's only after I came here and started interacting with folks on campus, I realized they perceive me as different, and I am different on campus, you know. Moving to New York, especially just a year before 9/11 and a year right after 9/11, the term brown, the term South Asian, the term Muslims was so much thrown around that many of us, it was like a re-racialization process that all of us had to go through. And I realized, oh my God, I'm brown. I'm marked as a brown immigrant, and I was forced to realize or negotiate my political work and space and my identity with so-called other straight South Asians. Our places of worship or shopping or living were being raided. And at that point, we had to build solidarity with other workers and leaders who were supposedly straight but were also doing work, you know. It was a very tough journey because we had to be in same spaces. We were now in same spaces with people with whom we had sort of, you know, contested relationships around queerness or sexism before, and now we had to all figure it out together. So I think it was a very intense racialization process that happened.
Back in Brazil, the image we had of India and Pakistan was that both countries were like didn't get along at all. Okay, and what I could see here is that both Indians and Pakistanis people, at least scholars and activists, as the main groups that I got to know, get along very well and discuss and do activism together and exchange a lot of knowledge. Did you have to negotiate those nationalist identities with like this coalition, South Asian?
Political boundaries just don't exist in maps or political processes, right? They exist in our lives. Right after 9/11, like the Indian consulate had sent out this email to all Indian citizens living in the US saying, wear a bindi, wear Indian clothes, identify yourself as Hindu, separate yourself from Muslims. In South Asian queer spaces, like, what it meant to be South Asian and queer had to be broadened because a lot of
Pakistani activists did not come to the meetings or came and left thinking this is just an Indian space.
Okay.
They're Indian nationalists, they're folks who subscribe to some amount of Hindu right-wing philosophy even within South Asian queer spaces. And that's when some of us who are also middle-class Indians and Hindus but are progressive had to do internal work with them. And some of it was really painful, it was like fights.
Were you one of those?
Uh-huh.
So you've been organized in Salga? No.
I used to organize with Salga. I co-founded the Queer Immigrants' Rights Project. The whole idea was to give peer support to each other while we believe that our own immigration experiences, through our own immigration experiences, we were experts in immigration law. So that knowledge needs to be transferred to other folks who are just entering or like going through the process themselves. So we support group. But I think the biggest challenge for organizing in the US was I was no longer a middle class professional Hindu man. In India, I was somewhere top in the hierarchy of populations. In the US, I was somewhere down. And I was also marked because of the HIV ban on immigration. Even though I got my green card approval, I couldn't adjust my status. I didn't have working papers. So there were like huge economic limitations to organizing. And it happens within immigrant rights work a lot because today you have a member, tomorrow they're deported. We do cash jobs. So if you got a day job, you can't come to the meeting, you can't come to the rally,
And let me ask you a question. Those immigrants that were deported, that do you know if when they got back in their countries, they still organized?
Not that I know of.
Not
that I know of.
Okay.
I've generally lost touch with folks who've gotten deported.
Okay. How did you begin to think immigration? How does immigration become your major category of fight?
I came to the US in summer of '96, and I came here on tourist visa because I was given full scholarship to come to present my work around HIV/AIDS in queer communities at the 11th International Conference on AIDS in Vancouver. And then I was visiting my extended family in Cleveland, my aunt and uncle. And my parents were really worried about me being out and doing organizing. And I had faced, and many of us had faced like public, beatings and like blackmail. So my parents pleaded me that I should stay back in the US, go to school here, come back when things cool down a little bit. But then I had to transition from tourist visa to student visa.
Oh.
And that marked the beginning of my understanding of what it really means to go through these transitions in paperwork. Because I could not work. On F1 visa, I could only work on campus. There were so it was like, that began like the moments of fear and thinking around my immigration status. But on December 1st, 1996, World AIDS Day, this is going to be a repetitive trope. I got the approval of transition from a tourist visa to a student visa. So things were supposedly hunky-dory. And also on December 1st, World AIDS Day 1996, my first niece was born, and we went to visit them in Chicago just after receiving the approval notice in the mail. So that's how it sort of began. But in summer of '97, I came to visit my friend in New York. I was still legal as a tourist visa. I had my visa, and the school applied for change of status, and I got my F1 visa, and I was going to school in fall of '96.
Okay.
The summer of '97, during summer break, I came to visit New York. I was in Akron, Ohio, and I was taking the subway
to go to see the Statue of Liberty at Ellis Island. And there were all these like women, and I remember like a bunch of women and folks with like pro-immigrant rights sign. I remember this one sign that says, it was some like famous singer. It said like Gloria
Stefan?
Yeah, Gloria Stefan.
Gloria Stefan, yes.
Gloria Stefan. There would not be a Gloria Stefan without immigration or something like that.
Okay.
And now, in hindsight, I realize what it was. In 1996, Bill Clinton had signed IRA, which is the most toughest immigration reform bill. And these folks were all protesting against that. And I was completely unaware of that. I mean, I was only aware partly of it. So that was like my first recollection of seeing, especially immigrant women. I remember the women with those signs, smiling at me. I remember like giving my thumbs up to them. That was like faintly put into my consciousness that there is some form of immigrant like organizing in this country. You know, 1999, it was very clear that I was going to remain in the NGO world, in the nonprofit world, here in the US. I was going to be an activist. And my family was very unhappy with it. So I left my degree incomplete. I ran away to New York. My friends drove me to New York. I found a job as an intern, but somehow figured out a way to work. And hence began my journey to figure out how to legalize myself in the US. And I was referred to go to the City University of New York Law School. They had a really good immigration clinic. And I went to talk to them in like August of 2000. By that time, I was pretty sure I had seroconverted because I was having unsafe sex, I was depressed, I was doing drugs, but I didn't have the courage even to tell my attorneys that I think I'm positive.
But have you been tested?
No.
Okay.
But I knew for sure I was positive. Having done work in HIV/AIDS, I know the science, I knew. I was afraid to go for testing because what if my name showed up? Because I knew about the HIV ban. I mean, most immigrants know that. So we filed for alien of extraordinary ability based on my international HIV/AIDS work. And I knew even if I got approved, I would be stuck in adjustment of status. But I was so afraid to talk about my body, the kind of sex I was having, about my HIV status that I didn't even talk to my attorneys.
Yeah.
My final approval came in March 2002. And it's like, fuck, now what I'm going to do? I have an approval for a green card.
But
I have to go to the doctor and like go for the medical exam and file for adjustment of status. So I went underground. I stopped communicating with my attorneys, everything, and I was getting sicker and sicker. You know, I was not on meds.
and you were not tested then?
No, I wasn't tested. I never went through any testing. I was waiting to die, basically. I was gonna get sick. I knew I was gonna die, so I was just waiting to die.
Long time they didn't call me.
In all at the same time, I'm doing HIV/AIDS outreach for Asian Pacific organization and telling people how to be safe, to get tested, and doing South Asian queer organizing and immigrant rights. And like anti-racial profiling work post 9/11. While I was not really talking about my own life, my own body. In summer of 2002, right after having organized Pride, I was coming back the night before the gay Pride parade to the apartment that I was sharing with 4 other folks in Brooklyn. And I was trying to climb the stairs and I could not, and I just fell and I had like high fever, I could not breathe, and so I had to be hospitalized. And it was obvious I had PCP. I had Kaposi sarcoma. You can see some of the marks still, they're kind of going away. I'm gonna pause.
It's okay.
It's hard sharing this. It was crazy circumstances, you know.
Yeah.
I was not in touch with my biological family. My primary support system were other largely queer and like folks like Monami from Brown, who themselves were struggling to build resources for our community. So I was in the hospital. There was a group of friends who came together to sort of negotiate with the doctors, the process. So that is when officially I was marked as HIV positive. It was summer of 2003.
Okay.
And so I was in hospital for a month, and that's when I first went on medication.
You were in the stage where you were like weak, you couldn't climb the stairs. What effect the medication does? The first effect you could see you were getting better with the medication.
Well, I think the first effect was I was able to eat again. Like after 10 days of nausea and vomiting, like I was able to eat again. I was hungry. That was the first effect I
Is
felt.
that the picture that we thought you looked a little fatter than today?
No, I go back and forth between. I've ranged. My general range is between 150 and 180.
Okay.
But when I was sick, I was like 105 to 108 pounds. Yeah.
Was it good for you? Like at that time?
Yes. I felt like for the first time in many years, I felt what it is like to appreciate food. What it is like to feel like your stomach is actually eating and digesting food.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened in between this willing to die and willing to live? What happened in this between?
I had to give due to a lot of friends who came around at that time, that 1 month in the hospital, the next 2 or 3 months, who gave me a lot of support. When I was sick, really, I was in immense pain, because I was being probed and prodded in all parts of my body. During that moment, during those days, my friends would come, they would laugh with me, they'd keep me encouraged, and they would go away. And at night, I was by myself in my bed, and I told myself I was going to live. I was going to live. I was going to tell not just my story, but like everyone else's story. And I was going to live. I knew I was going to come out of the hospital. I was in St. Vincent's on the topmost floor in isolation in a single room, and from my window I could see a sliver of West Village and the street that I used to walk on and go to queer cafes and hang out. And every day I would look through that window and I'd be like, I want to walk and shop on that street again, and I'm going to do that.
You have a foot on feminist theory as well, don't you?
I have a what?
A foot, that would be Portuguese.
Yes.
You have a little part of your body on
Yes,
feminist
let me
theory.
give you my theoretical framework, analytical point of departure. Within feminist theory, there's of course, folks like Lorianne Zaldua and Terry Moraga, who wrote Theory in Flesh, and who said the role of feminists, is to basically build theory in flesh.
What would be theory in flesh?
Theory in Flesh would be this movie, where we're giving sort of some form of structure to our life's experiences and creating a narrative out of it, right? And then you take a narrative to make it a meta-narrative and make a theory out of it, And Theory in Flesh is also where the role of the academic is also the role of the activist, where you take your organizing and the folks that are supposedly documenting or theorizing their life's experience and analysis and give that theory. That is Theory in Flesh.